Do you feel this restless energy for something that is bigger than now? Maybe it's time to step forward together and explore possible new ways of looking at life beyond our conditioned beliefs. Our gut is challenging us to release the limitations of trusting only proven facts, back to an awakening of our authentic selves. Our collective energy yearns to feel only positive and loving frequencies. The time is now to let go of what divides us and learn more about how we truly are all one. We are four friends, just like you, brought together through our journeys with a connected soul purpose. We hope that as believers, parents, healers, trailblazers, our conversations may evoke a possible stirring within you that will bring you to the other side of now. Take this self-empowering ride with us as we hop on this love train together. Destination, the other side of now. Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is the official launching of the Other Side of Now podcast. And these are our amazing tribe of women. Everybody can wave. We have Linda from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Linda Lubin from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Cottrell Mendenhall, who's also my cousin from Maryland, and Cheryl Sagezi, who is from Massachusetts. And I am Sandra Roma Mendenhall. Also, I go by Sandy. So we are really excited to have you guys. And like Cheryl and Linda would say, to jump on the love train as we take this journey together and just really not only talk about life, but all of the pieces that occur seen and unseen. And it's amazing to have a group of women who all kind of speak the same language, even though we come from all different places with different backgrounds and different life circumstances. It's safe to say, like, we can all find our way back to each other, right? And like these mirrors for each other in life that feels really special and safe.
I would
So
agree. Yeah.
today's episode is called Face to Face. And what this really is about is so many things, especially reflecting the fact that like we are face to face with ourselves right now. We are face to face with our loved ones right now, from being, locked down and kids out of school and just the circumstances of the country and the world. So we're going to talk about that stuff, and then like all of the like kind of unseen things too that we may be feeling, but maybe isn't always as like safe to talk about or as popular to talk about. So ladies, I'll let's just start with that. Like, what happens when we're left with ourselves? I know for me, probably like 5 or 10 years ago, if I was left with myself the way I am now, I would be like beating my head against the wall and not totally sure how I would be managing it. But Linda, we could start with you, and just like, what happens for you, like when we're left with ourselves, or what do you think about what's happening right now with everyone?
Oh, well, what's happening with everybody is that, there's so many changes that you're trying to make normal out
Mm-hmm.
of abnormal situation, which is so hard. So people are trying to find ways to maybe find joy and hope in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever we have thought before was our normal is not our normal now. So
Right.
finding things that we can do with even fun with each other. Like last night we did that house party game, like with people, like with my kids and my ex-husband and all of us together. And it does bring people together, I think,
Yeah.
in a very peculiar way.
So when you say we were all together, like it was all virtual, right?
Oh
Everybody was
yeah. Oh yeah.
connecting
Nobody was in
virtually.
my house, believe me. No. But yeah. But yeah, there's because of the technology, it makes it a little better, like
Mm-hmm.
than it could have been. Because like if you didn't have all of this, then you really would have felt more isolated, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I've
Yeah.
even been thinking about, and we've all talked about this. There's this quote from Rumi that is one of my favorite quotes. It's on my Instagram. can you remember who you were before the world told you who to be? And right now I feel like, is that not more like it makes sense now more than ever? It's like, we don't have our jobs, we don't have our identity, like our masks are coming off. Cottrell, we were joking about how like the hair and the nails and like the, like the gray is showing, and it's like, for a lot of us it's like no mask, so now what?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the part that really is getting me right now, is the idea that, so we're given this time to be home in the quiet of our home, and yet it's almost easier for all of us to be who we are every day in like the chaos of outside. And so now we're asked to be quiet, and it's really uncomfortable for people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the things I know we've talked about is this concept of, um, you know, people now have defined themselves by standards outside of themselves, by like what their job asks of them, their family, their community, their religion, etc. And now we're not outside, and now we're home, and now we're asked just to look at ourselves and who is that person inside, that real authentic us, when we can be quiet and we can be, I don't know, more just simple and go within. And that's the part that I think is the most challenging. It's easier to be us in the chaos than in the quiet of just who we are.
Right.
It's interesting you say that, because I do think that that is probably the most challenging. But I think about like ahead of the curve, the most challenging thing is going to be to remain that person that you find when the world starts to operate again, right? Because it's so easy to go back to what you're comfortable with during that short amount of time that you found yourself, or just being uncomfortable with how the world sees you. So you'll revert back to what you think the world needs to see, as opposed to standing strong on who you are and like what you believe. I think that's going to be even tougher than finding yourself. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. So why? What stops us? What is that piece that keeps that fear or that question mark of like, why can't we just go out and be who we are? Like, what is holding us back when we do look at those pieces of, I don't know, of fear, I guess you might call it, of moving forward. I know, like, for myself, when I think of it, I think it always comes back to that downward judgment.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think, if we had 50 million series about judgment, we couldn't talk about it enough, because it is just something that has complete power over our society. Somehow we have given judgment all of this energy. It's this real negative thing. And so to me, if there's anything this group can collectively do that would be really positive, is to start that conversation about judgment also, as one of our other pieces that, that we'll be discussing.
Absolutely. Because as you share that, for me, like immediately when I think about judgment, I think of the energy of growing up with this idea that like I had to be perfect.
Right.
And if you veer any way from what perfect looks like to you, or maybe has been presented to you, even if it was like unintentionally presented by your family or your culture or your religious background, you latch on to this energy, and it's so draining, but you don't even realize, like for so long I wasn't conscious about it. And the journey of that, even, and like making mistakes, which now I would say are not mistakes, that was growth.
Right.
But when you're going through it, you can just feel like such a failure.
Right.
And then fear of not wanting anybody to find out. Like, no one can know about my mistakes. So what happens? There goes another mask and another mask and another mask. And then you look up and you're like 20 different versions of yourself,
Mhm.
but it's like the real one is buried underneath all of that.
Yeah.
Right.
What
I
Cottrell
know,
said.
like when I think about fear too, I think about, and listening to you, Sandy, because you reflect on your own life.
Mm-hmm.
It's we live up to the expectations that other people have of us, and they might not even be ours. So we are playing a role. We're playing, what we've always known, who we've told we should be, or how we should act, or whatever, which might all be okay. And certainly it helped us to grow to be who we are. But at some point, to really stop and instead of living up to other people's expectations, again, going within and like, does that really resonate within me? Is that who I really am? Or do I dare to act differently now and disappoint those that love me and expect me to be X? And now I'm not X anymore, but hey, you love me. So I'm hoping that you'll see me as me now.
That's a big one. Linda, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, like what Cottrell said, is to hold on to who we are now. I think
Mhm.
that would be wonderful if we can do that. And you can do that when you're in timeout, but when you have
Mhm.
so much coming at you and so much you're expected to do every day and to accomplish, and so many of my friends, they get up at 4:30 in the morning to exercise, and then it starts from there and it keeps on going until they just flop into bed, and they don't have time to kind of think about really what they need, who they are, and all of those things that have been expected from them. But now it's almost like a simpler time, and if we can embrace that as being a part of this. I mean, there's so many older people that, are friends of my parents and things, that they went through like the Depression. My mother had an aunt that died in the Spanish flu, and
Mhm.
they went through a war and all these different things that we have not, or you all probably have not had to deal with. I mean, on a small levels, but not like something that affected us where we personally have to do something different and change our behavior. So in this time, what can we do to find ourselves, to find joy, to find the goodness in each other, learning how to work together and keeping that going when this is over, like Cottrell said? I mean, I think the challenge is going to be entering the real world later, after
Sure.
being time out in the cave, right?
Yeah, the new normal that we'll face.
Right.
Yeah,
That's right.
totally. I think to answer your question, a part of that, which I've had to do for myself, is um, to rewrite the standards for myself, where the standards before were what other people thought, right? They were my standards for living and how I was supposed to be successful and what was success. All of that was measured by standards that I allowed them to put on me.
Right.
But rewriting that for yourself, like you were saying, simpler times where I remember as a kid, like walking down a hill with my aunt with no shoes on, and like it was like the best thing in the world. Like I wouldn't do it in this day, right? But why not, at the same time? But like rewriting um, what joy is and what peace is for me and what success looks like for self, and as opposed to the standards coming from everyone else. I
Right.
think that would be a great starting point.
Right.
And with that, I know for myself, it's not a pattern that I'm proud of or that I would want to like other people to have to experience. But a lot of times for change, the depth of the change we're talking about to happen, it's like I like stuffed and stuffed and stuffed and stuffed for so long until my body could not hold anymore. And then it was like, and um and I've worked really hard on not allowing that, and so much of it has been like how I've chosen to see things. And it's like we talk about this a lot, and some people may not understand it at first, but like the gift in the storm and like the blessings that come out of adversity or even out of tragedy. Like this is a very challenging and we could say tragic time. And also we have an opportunity to choose different and to address things and to like Buddha says suffering is a choice and that happiness is an inside job. So if these are things that we're in control of, how do we get there? And I know some people may think, well, that's like, you know, the yogis or this foo-foo, but it's really not, because for me, things couldn't change for me until I learned to go in. And I actually had to break away from thinking patterns and conditioning of my own upbringing. Not that like, I mean, I have amazing parents and they did beyond amazing raising us, but things like you grow up, I was Catholic, you learn from the church or this structure or school, and then it shapes the way you think. And it took like going to college and a lot of things going awry, and then life after that, things seemingly going awry, for me to break out of all of those structures to really go back in. So it's like, I think we had this in our outline when we were talking about what we wanted to discuss. We were talking about like going within, like terrifying or transformational, and it's both, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's less scary for me now to talk about experiences that maybe at a point in time I would have gone, oh my God, like nobody could know I went through this.
Right. Right. Well, when you were just talking about too the gifts of this, it's interesting because I find that's one of the things that right now I'm trying to do with people is help them look at the gifts right now, and that can be people can get really annoyed with that comment or angry, or when I say, so actually, maybe we could look at this and see what the gifts are behind the corona. And, your words are correct, like the choice, like people, you can choose just to have this fear of what corona is right now and what it's doing, or we can look at it as a choice of growth and change, of stepping into something positive, changing our vibrations, getting a little bit higher, and looking at those patterns that don't serve us. Or the gifts are these beautiful ways people are all now, instead of thinking of themselves, are really stepping out beautifully and helping other people. So all of these beautiful gifts that have come forward, I mean, again, so many is self-growth, but too, it's also with the understanding of how people are helping other people. It's really beautiful.
What do you guys think is, because I know it's happened for all of us in our own ways, like that switch that allows us to go from seeing something as like, why is this happening to me, to how can I change this reality?
Right.
How can I shift this?
Well, the only thing you can do in times of trouble is to look at it a different way, because it's there. You can't change that it's there, right? So the only way that you can find something to cope a lot of times is just to step back and like look at it maybe from a different thing. There's so much going on, and so many people have are right now in the eye of the storm, and I'm in Pittsburgh, so it's not as bad right now as it probably will be. But this community, kind of what Cheryl was talking about, this community feel that we haven't had in a long time, because everybody is so busy in their own lives that they don't really stop and connect with their neighbors like they did. Or what can I do for the community? Just I told Sandy's mom that one thing that the police would like is if you can sew, make masks. And so that's, like Sandy's mom, I'm trying to get her with me to do it this week, right? So yeah, so there's things that we think of maybe that we can't change, but we can do our little part to make a difference. Even if it's to get groceries for a neighbor, or to say, like to kind of check on people that maybe, don't have anyone to check on them.
Right.
Have you guys felt like in your journey, and anyone can share if it speaks to you, like there was a point where you were just like, enough?
What day? Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I had one recently. So, but I think you have to get to that point where enough is enough and you want to try another avenue or another way, or you're just tired of how things are going. I think you kind of have to get sick and tired before um, that change happens for you,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
you know?
And in that energy of enough, does it override the fear that kept you from being able to even step into it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't even think about the fear. It's just like something else has got to give. So it's
Right.
worth a try at this point. And you don't even think about the what if.
Right.
You just want different.
Because I think when you get to that point, you're so tired of carrying, you're done. You're either exhausted and
Mhm.
there's going to be a different way. You
Mhm.
might just feel stuck and you're like, ah, what the heck? Or sometimes, I know, people just feel there's got to be more than what I'm doing right now. So what else? And so I think when those variables happen, they activate something within us that kind of is the switch, turns a switch that says, hey, I've been looking at life this way, and now I'm kind of open and I'm ready to maybe look at things from another perspective, switch my energy around, and we're ready for that growth. Or, like Cottrell was saying, if you're ready to do the work too, you kind of open up and you kind of become a little bit more vulnerable. That allows you to take those steps if you're going to make that growth for change.
There's
To
so
that
many,
point, oh, go ahead, Linda.
no, I was just going to say, I think there's so many gifts in being vulnerable, because when you are, more things come your way, it seems. More people come, they appear, and it just changes everything when you're willing just to take those risks, and whatever happens,
Right.
I have to make it happen or let it happen.
As you say that, and Cottrell, I'm really going to direct this to you because the word vulnerability, which I, in this point in my life, can really connect with. I know my husband, Richard, African American, grew up in a completely different environment than I did. When the word vulnerability comes up, that's like a very different reality for what his life presented. And I just wonder, Cottrell, like as a Black woman, can you connect to, does it apply in the same way we're discussing it, or is there really a difference in
So
that?
funny you even brought this up, because as we're sitting here and as Linda was talking, I was like, yeah, but what about the people that can't connect in, right? That just
Mhm.
Yeah.
aren't able, because it sounds great for those that can say, hey, I have an issue and I need help.
Right.
That takes a lot, especially in my community. The history in itself has made us so much stronger than I think we've had to be, but so much stronger in situations where I feel like we can bring the guard down and we can be vulnerable. We've just never been introduced to the word. We've never been introduced to what that looks like, right? If I were to kind of talk about it in my community, I feel like um, we were just born to, like, not born, but we were just told, like, be strong. Um, don't let them see you sweat. Don't cry, like all of that. So um, those are years that you just can't take away and say, okay, now be vulnerable. And
Mhm.
I don't know what the answer is. I think I don't know. I feel like you just have to come to a point where you realize it's okay. I don't know if there's one answer for the community. I don't know. I wish I did know that.
Tell me if this feels accurate,
Okay.
because when I think about um, experiences I'm watching you go through, when I think about experiences I'm watching Richard go through, it seems like to me, with confidence in self, it's created a space to be more vulnerable. Like as I've seen you become more confident in either your choices or what you're going to choose or like where you're headed, it's like this other space opened up.
Maybe. Maybe.
That in feeling safer in your body and safer in your reality, maybe that guard has come down a little bit.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Mhm.
When you say it like that, where it's safer in my reality, it definitely feels more vulnerable, for sure. But then you need to surround your reality with the people that will accept how you're feeling,
And support.
right? So that's a whole nother avenue, because then it's tough to balance that and live in your reality.
So how have you been doing with that?
I'm much better today, but I know the struggles of it, but I'm much better today, where, you just don't measure who you are by the world anymore. And that's been an ongoing journey. And I feel like lately, as in like a few days, it's something that I've tackled a little deeper, just doing like research on me and like who I want to be and redefining things. Shirley and I were talking a couple days ago. I can't remember the day, but a couple days ago, and I was like, she mentioned the word self-love, right? And I was like, we didn't really hear that growing up. I don't even know. I don't even know what self-love is defined for myself. So I had to define that. I was going to say redefine, but I don't think it was ever defined. So I had to define what that is for myself, like set standards again for myself. And I wish that that could be introduced to the community. Like, and it's okay. There are definitely African Americans that know it's okay and they're living out loud and living proud. But I think about, there's a whole part that doesn't, and they're going to be who they want to be. And they're not like, I don't care. This is what it is. But yet they're still struggling. So it's like, dude, you want change. So come on. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that brings up the other point of our journeys, is that challenging part of just owning our own journey, because we do, not, you for your love for, your community, love for family. We always want to push them along and say like, oh, wait a second, I know better. If you follow this will be great. And just letting them all kind of, maybe just by walking your example, you're going to make a huge impact, and I think with that self-love, when we just are really focused on being the best we can be in this just really pure loving way, I don't know, I think people do see that and they feel that, and it evokes change that we're not even aware of,
Mm-hmm. Just by being the example.
by being the example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a real fearlessness in maybe you're still afraid in stepping into it, but there's such strength in taking that step. And I think it goes back to like strength and vulnerability. Like vulnerability doesn't necessarily mean weak or naive or exposed. There's incredible strength in saying, I choose me. And this is a journey for me. That is a theme of my life, how to choose self. And probably for so many of us, I still have this candle that Linda got me. I think I was like out of college by this point, and it says, I love you more. And you could have received it as her saying, I love you more. But the whole lesson in it was like, she was like, this is for you. And every time you look at it, think of yourself and choosing yourself. And it really is like, how can we love anyone or anything truly in purity and unconditionally if we're not loving ourselves? but like I haven't been able to scratch the surface of what that actually means and is until I've become an adult and gone through like relationships that were not in balance, and codependency with family or friends, and just conditioning that like you think is so normal, and then you look up and again you're like, is this me, or is this like the me that everyone has loved? So then I guess I love her, so then I'll just keep giving everybody the version that they love.
Right. Right. And I think for a lot of us too, with this whole word self-love, it almost feels like this word that's very uncomfortable to say, that people feel it's almost selfish to say self-love and to think about us like, and I know a part of my journey in learning all of this is that I had beautiful parents also that just really taught about loving and loving, but their loving was really all giving. It was just all giving. And you know what? To give, and it is definitely who I am, but what I had to learn is that balance of it was okay to choose me first. It was a beautiful honoring. And so sometimes people, it can feel uncomfortable, like oh, a mother should always choose her children first. How could she ever choose herself? But sometimes the stronger thing is in loving ourselves first, we're teaching our children stronger lessons. Like it's okay for them to be independent from us and to grow up, to grow and make strong choices for themselves. I don't know, all these things are so interwoven. It's been self-love, I think, is one of the most challenging things to do, and yet it's the most beautiful. So for me, I think it continues to be a part of my journey.
When you started shifting that for yourself, Cheryl, like the process of receiving,
Yeah.
what was that experience like for you?
Well, it was very uncomfortable. First of all, it was just so uncomfortable. I almost would apologize and say like, okay, so I mean, like, I really want to do this, but I'm going to say no because I'm learning that this is a strong, I mean, it was exhausting. Anyone who listened to me was like, oh my God, just turn it off already.
Right.
And I did that for everything, even for everything. And so I know, as I say, it's an ongoing goal of mine. One of my youngest daughters will say to me all the time, Mom, I want you to learn to be a little bit more, she'll call it, be a little bit more selfish. Be more selfish, which is not the word, but it's talking about me thinking about me. I laugh though, because when our kids are used to us acting in a certain way, when we are strong and make those moves that, or those decisions that really reflect ourselves in love, she's like, okay, you can turn it off now. Enough already, kind of makes me laugh. But so it's a learning process for all of us,
When you said the word selfish, years ago, Rashard and I read a series of books called Conversations with God. I believe the author is Neale Donald Walsch, like one of the most fascinating selections of books I've ever read. And this was a gentleman who really had no spirituality at all. He was actually very distant, he would say, like from any type of a relationship with God. And he was so angry about his life circumstances that one day he just sat down and started writing a letter to God. And in writing, God started speaking back to him. So the first book is literally the conversation with God that was like, why is this happening? And then God would be like, well, what are you allowing? And then he would be like, what do you mean? What am I allowing? It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So in the series, the conversation of self-love comes up, and God says to be self-centered, centered on self, is not selfish. It's exactly how we were created in God's image to exist, centered on self. And if we're not centered on self, and even all the extensions of what centered mean, like in balance, in connection with source, in tune with who and what we are, how can we ever be anything for anyone else? Yeah. And so even when you talk about the word selfish, like I see it differently now too, because like we could all say to each other, you need to be more selfish. Like, why are you doing that? But then when we've all had to do it on our own, it's like, why is it so hard?
Right.
I have a friend that says, like when you're on a plane, they teach you, like whenever they show you the mask, right? You have to put your mask on first before you can help anybody else, right? And I think that's so true. And we really, like, we're not taught that. I mean, I've known Cheryl since we were like, she was 19. I was 20. She's younger.
That's another
And we
story.
want to hear these stories at some point of your college down at the Cape days.
Yeah, when we were at the Cape, right, together. That's a whole other story. And Cheryl goes, a story for another day. But I know that, like her parents were exactly the way that she described. But even when we were 19, when she was 19, she was always worried about everybody else and making sure everybody else was okay. And even when she wasn't feeling well or whatever, she didn't want to let anybody down. And that part, took a long time. So it's wonderful when you have children that say you need to do this, and that does help. Where Sandy, you all and with Miss King for Arc Hotel, you're just at the beginning stages of that, where your kids want so much all the time. So where are you in that? And that's hard to find balance, because your moment you wake up, the moment you open your eyes, it's all about them, right?
Yeah.
So it's challenging. I feel so bad for moms. I mean, I know I did it, but I don't really remember it in the way that I see now. Like, I'm so in awe of moms and working moms. I just don't know how you put it all together, and to look out for yourself whenever you have this little one that's dependent on you. That's amazing, right? You do an amazing job every day, I think.
Thank you.
Applause for Cottrell and all the mommies, and especially the single mommies and the single daddies out there raising children right now. It's
But Linda brings up a good point. When Linda and I raised kids, I mean, we weren't into this. I mean, we just went through day to day like how everyone else did, just doing what was expected of us, And so it wasn't until I was actually in my 40s, I think, that I really started to like think in different ways, and had my openings of like, what's my awakening? What else does life mean for me? What's my sole purpose? And pulled me in different directions. But yeah, so raising the kids, I give you guys so much credit, because you're so much younger and so much more aware and than we were at that point in time.
I'll tell you, I'm not having any issues with like self-love right now. I'm learning to say no, and it's okay, and it feels good and lighter, and I can smile about it. Like, it's okay. It's all about King, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And even with that, I'm not allowing her to stop me from doing what I need to do for me, so that I can be this amazing mom to her, right? I'm just like, creating a new life, and it is going to be about mom and King, but mom's got to be squeezed in there. Otherwise, we're going to be in this situation forever. Yeah.
And it's been so beautiful to be able to watch you through this, with like the fact that like King was just born last summer, and as a mommy to be who, is preparing, it's almost like I'm like on the fast track now, like, okay, this is going to get resolved, and I'm working on this, and like the boundaries and because like I'm even thinking like I will not pass these things along, like, and I have to be the example. And so unfortunately I have an amazing tribe of people and friends and family that can contribute to that, but it has been amazing watching you and King Cottrell, like really truly amazing.
Oh, thanks, Butts.
Yeah, she's so stinking cute. I want to eat her face every time I see her.
When we have King on our calls, doesn't it just change the energy even better? I think, right? Yeah.
And it makes me think about, because I see it in my own nieces and nephews, like the frequency of these kids coming in now, their consciousness and their frequencies are just different. Like they are on another level. I feel like these kids are tuned in, even with your granddaughter, Cheryl, like it just feels like they're part of the shift. These
Yeah.
kids are also coming in not only to teach us, but to help with this whole shift of consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me.
Right. Well, I love it because when King comes on, the ongoing joke is, I mean, who are we kidding? She's running all our conversation. I mean, totally. We think like we're in control. No way. We're all
No
watching.
way.
Yeah.
My
Hermana
oldest niece,
running
it's the truth. My niece Maya loves her crystals. She has like a whole crystal collection, and she sleeps with them under her pillow. And then when Situ, my mother, her grandmother, is feeling any type of ache or pain, she's like, "There's a crystal for that." And then she grabs her crystal and she puts it on her back, and she'll go, "Okay, Situ, just breathe, close your eyes." And it's like my mom relaxes and the energy shifts. And I feel like the same thing with Miss King. It's like in the presence of these children, there's a difference.
Yeah.
We were just talking the other day about Maya, in that I remember being over at your house and we were doing some, oh, she wanted to have some energy work done on
Yeah,
her.
we were doing energy work together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I placed a crystal in one hand and then one in the other hand. And she just snuggles in with a smile. And then you could see that little head going, nope, I put them in the wrong hand. And she switches them. Just so wise. Yeah.
So
She
wise.
knew. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I love it. So looking forward to seeing them like grow up together.
I know. It's going to be interesting. Like, so we all in finding out the sex of the baby this week, that was like such a amazing experience. Look at Cottrell with her little wiggle. I was convinced I was having a girl. I was convinced I'm having a girl. I know it. I see her. I had these visions for years. I felt her. I past lives were revealed. I'm like, I know it's her. And all three of you knew in your own ways. I feel like, yes, we're going to hold that intention with you, but there may be a different reality. So then when I got the call and the doctor and the nurse said, it's a boy, it was just like this complete moment of like shock and confusion. And all of this stuff coming forward, just like all these different like thoughts and emotions, and not an ounce of disappointment, just more like I was just so sure of this thing. But the gift in it too was like I had all this fear that I wasn't even allowing myself to think about, that was able to come up and come out in that process. So again, I feel like this little one inside of me isn't even present yet, fit in form outside of my bed, like it's not here yet. And he's already teaching me so many lessons about myself and about life. And it's fascinating when we choose to tune into it. If we choose to tune into it, it's absolutely fascinating.
But see, that's the beautiful part that I always, admire. I'm going to say in you is that in any challenge, you right away, you do go for, and I'm not saying it was a challenge, but it wasn't living up to your expectation of what you thought.
Oh, it was a major adjustment happening in real time.
But you did it in a beautiful way, not honoring your emotions, like how you really felt, and not pretending it didn't exist, but just really being genuine and authentic, which is beautiful. But then you're able to, that there is a gift under that. Like, what else? Why did I think that? What else do I need to learn?
Yeah.
And you continue to explore it until that energy presents itself. And then you really, multiple gifts came forward with it.
So
Which
many.
is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And something I do want to share, because I feel like, it just feels right to share it, is in so many ways, I really gravitate towards like the divine feminine energy. and like the strength and the purity of that, and like even going back to like ancient Egypt and Isis and the goddesses, and you know, all of these different entities that have existed and lifetimes that we've all had. Like I really identify with that feminine energy. So even as the baby has been communicating with me, I've always seen him with this strong feminine. It always came to me as a her. And I realized in my human form, the limitation of identifying like that type of like love, compassion, and connection, like automatically for me is female. And if you would have told me like I don't see things in balance, I would argue that tooth and nail, like, no, the divine masculine and feminine, like we're all in this together. But it really did show me, and you see it now with these younger kids, like how gender, it's really not about like gender anymore. Like all the role, like anybody can step into any role and it's fine.
Yeah.
And so that was something that was immediately rewritten for me in just from like an energy standpoint. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you have brothers that are very kind and very sensitive and very compassionate and very loving
Yeah.
and very intuitive. And I think that's maybe what you were picking up a little bit more. And
Yeah.
I think you're going to have a wonderful experience coming
Oh,
forward.
I'm so excited. And that's the thing, like I'm so excited, and Rashard is so excited. And, you know, in his wisdom, he said to me the day we found out, he said, God doesn't make mistakes.
Mhm.
And he said, this is so much bigger than us. And
Mhm.
so, you know, we're following it. We weren't even trying to have a baby. We joke now that like that we would probably have never looked at each other and been like, hey, you want to make a baby? Like, with everything that's happening in life, like we'd be like, oh, we could wait. And God was like, nope.
Yeah. It's happening.
Cottrell, this is all Cottrell's fault. Last year, she's like, you're going to be pregnant by January. I was like, well, you stop.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that when you got
The
pregnant?
little manifester. Yes, I did.
Right. That is her little behind the scenes name, the little Miss Manifester for sure.
A true manifester.
Funny.
I know, it's amazing. So, something I did want to talk about, well, we wanted to talk about, but I wanted to make sure we touched on it today, was with everything that's happening around the world, this concept of Mother Earth and Gaia. And I know we share collective beliefs in this, but that like with COVID-19 and, you know, the pandemic, like it's so much deeper than even what it's presenting. Like it's obviously a very serious problem. And even in that, NASA keeps printing pictures and photos of the planet's pollution and air quality changing and the earth healing and like water quality changing. So it's really made me think about Gaia's role in all of this too. Like, I need you guys to slow down so that we can heal too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Gaia's journey really mirrors our journey. And as we've talked about in the show with our personal journeys, like, you know, when do you make a change? And it's kind of like when all of a sudden, you know, you're just burdened so much and you realize like, I'm choosing not to go forward anymore like this. I think Gaia has presented in many different ways. She, you know, has cried out for help from us. And, you know, we've done a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and kind of ignored her in many ways. And I think, you know, opportunities present themselves. And so when we're not listening, she's going to present another opportunity for us to grow and to make some changes. And I think this is a huge one where we weren't listening. So now she's presenting this to us. And it's not only about our own personal journeys to make change and to increase our frequency and to become lighter, become light. She's doing the same for us. And I think all those examples you gave, Sandy, are so true of, you know, even our collective awareness of now oh my gosh, yeah, the pollution is going down, you
That's
know, and it is increasing people's awareness of how we do deal with the Gaia. And I also think too, with just our frequencies, as we take the time to become our best selves, it also will reflect in the energy. It raises her energy too, because then our actions reflects something that you know we'll go hand in hand, and it will be I don't know. It's kind of like as we make better choices for ourselves, it kind of is a mirror to her. We make better choices for her.
It goes back to everything is energy.
Yeah.
We're energy, the earth is energy. Anything that breathes, whether it's a plant, a human, an animal, we are all energy, and all of that energy is synced, whether we choose consciously to be aware of it or not. And so it feels like not only what is happening is a human experience, but it's a living experience. Like everything that is living on this planet is going through change and transformation right now.
It's becoming even more clear how we are really all one. We are all one with other countries, with other people, like you said, with plants and animals and all of the resources that are offered in the earth. We are all one. And now, have we stepped back and maybe can look at that even from a different way than we did before? Like, we're doing all this together and we're helping each other. How can we continue to help each other and help the planet? Because we want to be here. We want your children to be here. We want your grandchildren to be here. The only way that we will survive as a species is for us to work together and realize we are all one.
Do you guys think this will shift that consciously for people?
I hope.
What,
hope.
to say that we are all one, or
Allow people to open up more to that concept, like not seeing all of us as separated, whether it's race, sex, ethnicity. Like, do you see this being a bridge?
Be lovely.
Well, I think even just some of those statements now where we're realizing that being at home, oh, we gave a lot of a lot of people said, oh, people in high positions, wow, they're great. Oh, the people with all this money, or I don't know, we kind of, our energy or what we said were high standards, good standards to live toward. People are really realizing, like, wait a second, let's like rethink that already. Oh my gosh, this person who is risking her life to work at the grocery store so I can have groceries. How unbelievable is that? Boy, these classroom teachers, like we used to kind of, you know, I worked in a school for many years, and it's the idea that, when we grew up, our parents gave all the teachers, et cetera, ultimate respect. That doesn't just happen nowadays. And I think now people are really realizing, like, oh my gosh, these teachers are really amazing. Like, how are they doing this? So I do think we are shifting with that energy, and we're all one. Instead of like giving different people the power, it kind of is shifting to see how we all do really work together as one, and energetically, as we all know, we are one. And so I see that as a beautiful change. That whole thing of respect is it's this new energetic term that we are changing, I think, right now, by looking at people in a way that is really more heart centered versus being in our minds, as we know is always the more powerful one. And I think that maybe if I could sum it up right now with how this virus might help all of us, if we're going to look for the gift, is helping people really just to go to that place and be heart-centered for themselves and for others. And then that expands right out to Mother Earth.
Right. That's right. But going back to what we said from the beginning with what Cottrell said about when we get out of this cave,
Yeah.
what happens next, right? What happens next? And
Yeah.
wouldn't it be wonderful if we take the lessons that we've learned during this time out
Right.
and used it for the future and the future of all of us?
Right.
But we shall see.
Right.
You're feeling different though, Cottrell.
I am. Um, I'm not feeling like people will be able to take their power back and keep it. Um, maybe take it back momentarily during the timeout. But like I said, to sustain it is going to be the key. It's the key to anything, right? Like the consistency of something. Um, and for many reasons, I just feel like it is so tough to fight the struggle of getting out of it that people will revert back.
But maybe it's not, something like this can't help us all just get to that place, but maybe this is an awakening for all of us.
Maybe.
So the choice is whether each person as individuals choose to make that change, to really to walk in a new way, to carry new energy, to look at life differently, maybe to get more heart base with self-love, become more vulnerable. I any of those words, but if nothing else, as we all know, walking in this journey is lifelong. So just having a timeout for this from this virus isn't going to just make us all like, okay, we're all set. But I think if we can talk about some of these things, give people an awareness, if nothing else, I love this whole, whether people agree with us or not even being the point, it's the idea of it creating conversation. That's the part that I love. That's the part that really excited me about being a part of this podcast with everyone, is that we were all on the same page, that we're not telling people that they need to believe what we believe or whatnot, but we're saying, so this is how we look at it. And we're seeing this as change or awakenings or possible gifts. And I don't know, like, play with it, see how you feel about it, and not everyone's going to agree with us, but I don't know. I think conversation is the beginning of any kind of change.
As you were talking, I agree with you. And I was like, well, what am I not feeling more specifically? And I feel like I revert back to my community that
Ah,
may or may not listen to podcasts, right? So this may or may not touch them. Or the struggle is so hard to get out of mentally.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, just even within my family. So the struggle is so hard because we're so conditioned to be a certain way, and that's the way we're supposed to be, that yeah. And I guess I don't want to sound like I don't have hope, right?
It doesn't sound like
Because
that.
I do, I absolutely do.
Mhm.
But I do know how hard it is when the conditions for generations and generations and generations, you're asking to change all of that within us is very difficult.
right, right.
So yeah.
So go
When
gentle on yourself, right? I was just going to say, so don't expect to have all those changes, but each time we make a change and we can feel that, wow, I did something different that time, or I was really able to be my authentic self in front of this person, and usually I kind of change. I don't know. I think if we just take each of those moments and really credit ourselves, feeding our self love, like that was really good, like that, I'll do that to myself. Charlotte, it's pretty good you did that. It's a way of feeding ourselves, because we're the best ones to do it. That's, our body wants to hear us loving us, not anyone else. And so in stepping out into the community later, it is going to be challenging, but always remembering, we're not going to change, we can't change the people out there, So whether they've listened to the podcast or not, or they have and they've changed or not even the issue. It's always about us just being the best person we can be, like making those changes. And even if it's just that one, and these 50 million, still on the list to do, I'll get to them, but continuing to credit yourself and moving forward that way. I don't know. I think that's a really positive thing we can do for our body.
And
Yeah.
as a mom, because you have a mom of a little one that's almost 2 year old, things will be different maybe for her because you will raise her different and you'll allow her to have an idea of a different way to look at life, a different way to live, a different way to see herself. And that's a change right there, even though it's so small.
But then I have to put her in an environment where that change and that mindset is
Right.
accepted, right? So then, do you get what I'm saying? So then there's a conflict because she could be with other friends or other family where it's like, well, why isn't it like that over
Right.
here?
Yeah.
And I hear you just to like accept it, just that one journey, and just to like
Right.
applaud yourself for just that one time. But there are people that don't know how to do that, for one. And I feel like as a culture, we are constantly trying to catch up, right? So we feel like we're behind anyway. So we're constantly trying to catch up. So to say, allow yourself to do that, I agree. But when I say that, I can also hear people say, if I just allow that to be, then I'm still behind everyone else or behind everything that is supposed to be. Or do you get what I'm saying?
There's layers for sure. I mean, it
Yeah,
feels like
which
there's
makes
definitely
it
a depth.
difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Difficult. And I will say, I choose to really believe this, not impossible, right? Like,
totally.
and,
Right.
as I'm hearing all the perspectives, all of which I connect to, two things that came forward was, one, this ultimately, maybe what we're discussing is like the opportunity to change if you choose to take that step. And this energy of compassion, I feel like through this virus, we're seeing an outward expression of compassion towards people that maybe never would have experienced it before.
Mm.
I also feel like it's putting everyone on the same playing field to a certain extent, as far as like anybody can be exposed.
Right. The
So
virus doesn't care who you are.
yeah.
It doesn't. Right. You're absolutely right on that. I'm going to say this. I had a teacher once who said that we all fought to get here during this time period, like to be born during this time period, because I believe something maybe like we have more than one life kind of thing.
Mhm.
But that because it was a time of change, and that was the reason why souls wanted to come now, because it was a time of change, and we've had a change in technology, we've had a change in the way that people like live their lives and the opportunities and all of those things. But it was also a time of change, I think, of consciousness. And so we can't maybe take and help everybody, or we could only change ourselves, right? So, or in our little small little postage stamp of the world, right? So, Cottrell, I know, it'd be lovely, like your whole entire family and cousins and everybody's on board. But the only thing all of us can do is maybe just what we can do within our small little world, and see what happens for that. And if everybody does that, then the earth is covered, right? Everybody has done something.
Linda, it's making me think about this quote from Tupac Shakur. For hopefully we all know who Tupac is. If we don't, he's a rapper who passed way before his time. He said, I may not change. I'm paraphrasing because Richard would like kill me right now. He'd be like, "You quoted Tupac and you didn't say it right." But it's I'm
Hear
sorry.
him too.
Yeah, you know how disrespectful that is. But in honoring the wisdom of Pac, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, "I may not change the world, but I will spark the mind that does. I will influence the mind that does, or I will influence the mind that can." And I think about that with you, Cottrell. I think about that with Richard, who's just been on such a transformational journey back to self, and constantly encouraging him, like, as he figures this out, it ripples out. And we can't know or quantify how it ripples out or the amount of it, but we just have to trust that our sole purpose is to contribute why we're here, like to reclaim ourselves and to stand in our gifts and share that, and trust that God takes it from there, whether it's one person in the community or 30 people in the community or 30,000 in the community. That's something that I really anchor myself in from a belief standpoint.
Right. And because when we talk about we're all one, it's the energy of love that unites all of that. And if we all stood in that statement that we are indeed all one, and I know it can be easier said than done for me, but could we, if we stand in that, then maybe all these other things that separate us can fall away. Like, different religions try to separate us, certainly different cultures do, ethnicities and whatever. We limit ourselves in all the different ways we define ourselves, which are all beautiful ways. They're parts of us we've grown up and they're beautiful. But do we ever reach a place in our life where all these ways that we've defined ourselves, we can push them aside and just all collectively see how we're the same, and that we are just all of one heart, that universal love, that energy of love. I don't know. I know that.
I vote yes.
Love train, everyone. Here we go. Yeah, I don't know, but that's just what goes through my mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know, for example, grew up Lutheran, right? So now I don't define myself as Lutheran at all, but the structure of growing up as a Lutheran brought me to a place of spirituality, and so right now I feel I'm far more spiritual than I was when I kind of grew up in the church, but it brought me so many gifts and I'm so thankful for it. But so just kind of looking at different ways and not letting them still define us. Again,
It's a start. It's a start. I mean,
start.
I feel like we have to start somewhere, even if it's just planting that seed. Like Pac said, sparking the mind that can change it.
Yeah.
We're all contributors.
Yeah. And Cottrell, I think the biggest beautiful thing that you've been saying is that you are just going to be you. I mean, you're just now claiming you in self-love, this new beautiful word. I mean, please, if it begins and ends with that, how lucky will King be? I mean, that is a gift.
Exactly.
So that in and of itself, slam dunk.
Yeah. And that has been a mind shift because you take on the pressure, and I know I'll be speaking for Shard too right now. You take on the pressure of things that you're supposed to do for your family.
Yeah.
And now I see King as, she's not only my only family, but she's like the head of family. So I agree with you, Cheryl. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Like even us having this conversation and the weaving in and out and the perspectives, it's all a part of it.
Yeah.
It's all a part of it. And we could go on and on and on and on. And lucky for our listeners, we are just going to keep going on and on in different episodes. And, we're going to keep this conversation going. So with that, you will be able, and when I say you, I'm talking about all of our amazing listeners, write us, message us if you have questions about anything we talked about, or you guys have comments or disagreements. Like, please, like, share where you're at in the conversation, because it really is about all of us. And even moving forward, if there's certain things that you're like, hey guys, I'd love to chat about this, like, we're so open to suggestions and input, and we will keep the conversation going. So thank you for joining us. We love you all. Please continue to stay safe. And until we meet again.